Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm a couple of minutes late. My last call overran slightly. Lovely to see you all. Hello to everybody on LinkedIn. Hello to those on YouTube. A couple of questions for all of you before we start. Firstly, whereabouts in the world are you? I'm hoping we've got a bit of a mixture. I'm assuming probably some in the UK, some over in the US, although there's always locations that throw themselves out here that are always a bit wider afield. And secondly, I would love to know kind of what experience we've got on the call today. So I'm interested if you can pop in the chat, what percentage of your permanent recruitment work last year was retained? I'm assuming we're probably going to have a mixture there as well. Some that are brand new to retain, some that are doing some of it, but not a lot. And some of you probably are fully retained as well. One thing that is for sure, lots have moved and are moving to a retained model, but need a little bit of extra help with some of the next bits. And that is my ambition today, to help you with the next bits. What I've got to share with you all is probably going to take roughly 30 minutes, but we've got plenty of time. We've allowed an hour for the session, so don't worry. Any questions along the way, save them up for the end, and at the end I will answer as many of them as I possibly can. Okay, let's jump into it and make a start. So I always like to give a bit of background into us as a business and where we come from, and our grounding was as contingent recruiters. Lou, who isn't on the call today, but is the founder and CEO of Retrain Search, and we are a fast-growing recruitment training business, revolutionizing how recruitment agencies operate. Lou was driven by initial success and then ultimate frustration as a contingent recruiter, and subsequent years spent learning the new world of retained and executive search, then going on to learn even more in talent mapping, in pipelining, and insight studies. Lou launched Retrain Search more than 5 years ago now with what was a bold mission to help recruiters shift to a retained business model, empowering them to work more effectively and more profitably. And a little bit about me. So my name is Jordan Taylor. I own the business with Louise. I'm a director and coach here at Retrain Search. And it was probably 7 or 8 years ago now that I was a contingent direct hire recruiter, experiencing all of the common frustrations that no win, no fee model presents. I had no commitment from clients. I was working on a fastest finger first approach. I had candidates dropping out all over the place. And in hindsight, spent most of my days working for free until I then graduated from the Retrain Search course and never worked on a contingent basis again, going on to secure and deliver millions of pounds worth of business, all on a retained basis over the next few years, from senior vice presidents in California to managing directors in the UK, sales leaders across Europe. I just used the tools, the lessons, the confidence that this course gave me to build deeper and stronger partnerships with my clients across the globe. I then spent 18 months or so as part of the community before Louise finally convinced me to come on board full-time as a coach. I was back in 2021. Feels like a long time ago now. I'm delighted to have spent the last 5 years helping thousands of our members go on the same journey that I went on. Okay, so contingent is great, right? Well, I always like to make sure that it's clear that I believe it absolutely has its place. And that's where I started too, right? I imagine that we all got to a place with contingent where we'd built up an insanely good network, right? We had a great track record of placements. superb understanding of the industry that we specialize in. We have a great reputation, and where ultimately we had absolute confidence that, given the opportunity to, we'd deliver. Except the bloody client keeps making everything difficult, right? Like, you send the best candidate that exists on the planet, and they just want to see more. Or they get totally distracted by some random spec from another agency, which probably doesn't even exist. Or there's suddenly an internal candidate, which may well have been in the background all along. You just didn't know. And then we finally get to offer and they lowball it. Yeah, believing that the candidate should think themselves lucky to have the opportunity to work for our client. Or HR or someone else sticks their oar in and makes things difficult or change the goalposts completely. And then their interview process or techniques are absolutely terrible and they put good candidates off. Or a key decision maker goes on leave or is tied up midway through the search. And that means we lose crucial candidates in the delay. As I mentioned, the client lowballs or even just stalls on offers. They just won't flex to meet the market rate. And ultimately, what often happens is we get sick of all the shit and we walk away. So what that means is our predicted forecasts are totally different from the actuals. And actually, often only a third of the fees that we work on actually come in. People get fed up with it all and leave. And that means it becomes really hard, if you look at the bigger picture, to build EBITDA, to build long-term value in any permanent recruitment business. And we get stuck competing against multiple agencies on low-value PSL work, and it becomes hard, if not impossible, to get that juicy C-suite stuff that all the search firms are raking in. And that's why retained is so much better, right? So much better when the client is committed. Typically, you're going to see treble the productivity from the same resources. Forecasts that are accurate. And the quality of people that we attract, it increases exponentially, as does the value of that permanent recruitment business. Retained means that we can get up into the senior and the C-suite projects where all the fun and game-changing margins are. But we all know that already, right? Which is why, as we saw in the chat, many of you have started to make moves towards a retained model. Some of you, if not all of you, have started to insist on some financial commitment for perm work in some or in most cases, and have started to get some of your team members to do the same, no doubt, too. Happy days, right? Except it's normally not quite going as well as it should be. You've been taking money up front, but clients still reject great candidates without validity. They still want to see more candidates. Or other agencies are sending NPCs, most placeable candidate specs, basically. Yeah, and they're sticking a problem in the middle of it all. Internal candidates are popping up out of nowhere. Unrealistic salaries, or clients being unrealistic on kind of their attractiveness to clients. HR and talent acquisition are still getting in the way. They still change the requirements of a search halfway through. New decision makers are still getting involved. The interview process is still turning great candidates away. Stakeholders are still going on vacation. And that is allowed, by the way, just ideally not in the middle of a search with no kind of backup plan. And they still lowball. They still stall on offers and don't flex to meet the market rates. So many firms that I meet are stuck with retainers that are a nightmare to fill, where clients are making it really, really difficult and insisting that the searches are reworked and reworked, meaning that they go on and on and on, eating into all of that profit margin. And actually, some people never got on the retained bus in the first place. And if they didn't, now they definitely don't want to. And that's an issue. Because so many people that I meet are using amended contingent terms or just bastardized versions of someone else's retained terms. Or they're selling retainers and then delivering them using a contingent process. Please don't do that. Or they're using fully retained process, but they're actually overcommitting when all they've got is a few £1,000s or dollars up front. And therefore, they still don't have true commitment, but they're now delivering a more robust and more time-consuming service, often embarking on a search thinking that they're safe and thinking that you're secure, only for things to start to crumble. And often the result of that is ultimately you not feeling truly confident about scaling with the processes that you have in place. So, what's going wrong? Right? Why isn't everyone just living the dream? Well, the reality of it is most people haven't worked for a Shrek. And just to be clear, Shrek is an acronym for the biggest search firms in the world. So that's Spencer Stewart, Hardwick and Struggles, Russell Reynolds, Egon Zehnder, Korn Ferry. I mean, never mind a Shrek. Most people haven't worked for a proper retained search firm, and that means they're self-taught. So no one is exactly sure what it's supposed to look like or how to avoid all of these things. But most of you are kind of halfway there, right? But the devil with mastering most things is, of course, in the detail. Because the reality of it is, how many of the issues does getting money up front actually solve on its own? So what happens, and what I see happen all the time, is lots of people get halfway over the bridge to retained, and then they get stuck. They just can't figure out how to fix it all, and they end up slowly retreating back to contingent where they all started. So I wanted to bring all of this up with you today because our goal as a business is to stop you from doing that, to give you as much help as we possibly can to get you to the other side. So we run 3 programs: Search Foundation, Search Mastery, and Retained Marketing and Automation. Depending on kind of where you're at in your journey, is which of those might be right and relevant to you. But today I want to share some help with you on 3 key pillars, and that's price, commitment, and execution. And combined, these 3 things should help you get over that bridge. So pricing, and often I find most people they associate retained with a change in pricing model, right? And they believe that getting money up front is the holy grail. You start to realize just how far away this is from a true retained model when you look at how the real retained firms do it. Yeah. I normally ask at this stage if you're familiar with the term Shrek, but we've just been through that. So the Shrek firms, they charge 1/3 of total compensation, typically 33%. And they charge it across 3 stages. Well, it's actually 4, but I'll come on to that. So the first stage is as you'd expect, it's on commencement of the project. The second, they charge 30 days later, and the last 30 days after that, regardless of whether or not a candidate has been found. So, in fact, a fourth and final invoice becomes payable based on any actual difference between the estimated compensation and the actual compensation, if or when the candidate is actually hired. So, in theory, the client could be 60 days in, they've paid the full fee and not seen a single candidate. But most of us mere mortals will never get away with that as a payment model, right? Here's what's always worked for me. I would say to clients that yes, the typical cost for this solution is slightly higher than a contingent service because there's more work, there's more time, there's more resources involved. It carries a fee of 30%, and we break that down into 3 stages. The first third is payable on commencement of the assignment. The second is payable on confirmation of agreed shortlist, and the balance is due on completion of the project. Now, that might sound like a radical departure from your normal contingent payment terms, even that kind of engaged deposit-led model that you might be using, but it's a bloody good deal when you compare it to those Shrek firms and how they're doing it. Here's another fundamental that many people trip up on. I tripped up on it too. Most people, in return for financial commitment, they commit to fill the position, which again is quite stark contrast to the wise ones because they commit to executing the search. Think about the payment model and let me ask you a question. If the client is paying the fee, all of it, after 60 days, irrespective of whether a candidate has been or ever will be found, what do you think they're paying for? Right, let's have a think about that for a moment. What I'm hoping is coming to a lot of your heads is process, commitment, intelligence, all of this. And that's absolutely right. Again, I would love for a client to be happy to give me all of the fee, even if I haven't found a candidate. But that normally doesn't wash. What does work for me is making sure I'm committing to executing the search, not committing to fill. After all, it isn't me that can actually make the decision to hire. So how can I possibly commit to fill? How can anyone? But then how on earth do you answer that big question? What if you don't fill it? So here's how I'd handle that question. I would say, listen, I want to reassure you that the commitment here is absolutely mutual. The financial commitment from you enables me to commit in return and importantly work with you until we reach a result. But we're dealing with people here, right? So I can't guarantee you that the result we end up reaching is going to be the exact result we set out to achieve at the beginning. Maybe that candidate doesn't exist. Maybe they do exist, but they're just not looking for a new role right now. What I can guarantee you, though, is our process that it will be thorough, it will be rigorous, it will be transparent. We'll share with you our workings every step of the way. And that means if we can't find the perfect candidate, we'll resteer the search accordingly. We'll use all of that intelligence and make sure we go in the best possible next direction. And that means when we reach a result, you are going to be absolutely confident you're making your hire from all of the talent and it's the best result available to you at that time. I'd go on to say our success rate on retained projects sits at 98%. If I thought there was any chance we wouldn't reach a result this time, I would not be risking that success rate. I wouldn't recommend this as the right solution. So what do you say? Will you let me demonstrate capability? Okay. So another major hazard in taking money up front without having knowledge and experience of true retained search. And listen, I fell over so many times with this is execution. Most people wing it when it comes to delivery. They do. I've seen all sorts. I can't even explain what I've seen. I've done most of them myself too. Adding video interviewing or client logins to software so they can see the search data, behavioral profiling, client microsites, candidate briefing documents. I mean, my word, the names of products and processes and solutions. I've seen infographics and psychometrics, all the bells and whistles. And then I've kind of seen the exact opposite of that too. People just taking a retainer and just doing what they normally do with a bit more commitment and priority. The reality is that a true executive search process often just isn't necessary for a mid or a senior hire, but it's got to mitigate against all of the things that could go wrong. Because let's face it, the money up front just doesn't solve many of the problems that we mentioned, does it? And again, the devil with delivery is definitely in the detail. So how, for example, will you mitigate the risk of that key stakeholder going on holiday mid-search? How do you deal with another stakeholder getting involved partway through? Or how do you mitigate the risk of them rejecting perfectly suitable candidates? That bastardized version of contingent terms that I mentioned, or a borrowed version of someone else's retained terms that you just don't understand the intricacies of, it just doesn't cut it, guys. It really doesn't. Anyway, from a delivery standpoint, here's kind of what has always worked for me. So it's essentially best practice headhunting. And it's based on the traditional exec search model, but it's leaner, faster, it's tailored to this level of hire. It begins with a full briefing session involving all stakeholders to agree and define the parameters of the search and the process. And that includes a few things. Firstly, the full role profile. We're going to agree the functional and behavioral competencies, the geography, any target companies, and any off limits. We'll agree the timeline, the process of the search, and importantly, the client's EVP, their employee value proposition. Now, once we're clear on the scope of the search, we essentially cast a net over the talent pool. We identify every candidate across that geographical location who looks to have the right skill set to meet the criteria. And we then systematically and professionally approach every single candidate using multiple methods, including direct and professional headhunting, to gain as much interest in the opportunities as possible. The whole process is transparent. We'll share with you every week our progress. The client will get a spreadsheet showing them every candidate. We can also collect whatever data they might like too, whether that's salaries, bonuses, even perception of them in the market. Now, if we're faced with a challenge, which rarely happens, we work with them to resteer the search accordingly. And ultimately what that means is a long list of candidates emerges who are what we call QIA. They're qualified against the criteria, they're interested in the opportunity, and we've assessed them against the brief, both functionally and behaviourally. And it's from that long list that jointly with the client we'll agree a short list of 3 to 5 of them to interview. At the end of that process, they will be absolutely confident that they are making their hire from all of the talent that's available to them in the market at that time. So I want to take a moment to reassure each of you that if you are facing some challenges with this, you are absolutely not alone. Like it isn't easy, right? And if it was, everybody would have already done it, right? And nobody operating a perm recruitment business above kind of high volume labor supply level would be operating on a contingent basis. I also want to reassure you that over the next 5 to 7 years, skills will continue to be scarce globally as technology in every industry continues to develop at speed. Competition for talent will remain fierce, and spray and pray contingent recruitment agency delivery methods at those mid and senior levels will continue to fall short of client expectations and requirements. More and more recruitment firms, both large and small, are going to need to move away from the low value, high volume, no win, no fee model. And in order to deliver positive outcomes for the clients, are going to need to shift to a model that's more rigorous, thorough headhunting based search models requiring financial commitment. Yeah, that's going to be a requirement from clients on the commencement of projects. So this is set up for you. So I would implore each of you to keep going. I hope kind of some of what I've shared today has been helpful. Some of you, I have no doubt, are going to want to try and figure all of this out on your own. And I implore each of you to keep going, keep trying. You will get there eventually, and it will absolutely be worth it. For those of you that want to get there quicker, I'd love to help you. Yeah. So in the comments, I think it's Kirsty is in the comments. She's going to pop a link to a strategy session with us so that we can help you wherever you ultimately are up to with this. We'll provide the advice, the guidance, the tools, the support, everything you're going to need to make the next bit of that journey as smooth sailing as possible. So if you want to kind of finally break into the senior C-suite world like Josh and Ben did, or maybe you're partway there and you kind of want to break away from the horrible halfway house that can be contained or retingent, like we spoke about. And if you just want to know exactly what needs to be done every step of the way to get there quickly and win kind of big multi-hire projects, then we're there for that too. Whether you're at the beginning of the journey and what you really need is our Search Foundations program to get you to the stage where you're consistently winning and delivering retained, or you're already 50% retained and you want to go all the way with our mastery program, or maybe you just want to turbocharge the retain leads with that marketing and automation program, we've got a solution to help you. I would love each of you to kind of go and have a look on our website, right? To go and review some of the testimonials, not to say that we're great, whoever you choose to do this with and however you choose to get there. These are all people that started on a session like this, just like you guys though, and are now absolutely flying with it. And I'd love every one of you to see that it's absolutely possible and that you guys can do that this year too. So scan the QR code, as I say, for a free strategy session. I have open time up in my diary next week. I've got availability. I would love to speak to as many of you as possible. I've got some time allocated, as I say, next week. There are 2 pathways we'll go down depending on your experience. If you're new to retained, we'll go through a retained readiness review. Yeah, that session is designed to review your current business model and deal structure, identify what's missing across the process, positioning, confidence, pricing, and proof. And we're going to map out exactly what needs to happen for you to start selling retained with confidence. Some of you I know will have a little bit more experience and have done some retained already, in which case the session will take the form of more of a health check. It'll diagnose why your retained revenue fluctuates. If it does, it'll pinpoint where the deals stall, leak, or downgrade. We'll sharpen pricing and positioning and review how effectively you can use AI in sales today. We'll also provide some guidance on how to build that ongoing tailored strategy, stabilize fees, and increase fill rate and completion. So I would love to speak to as many of you as is possible. In the meantime, we've got about half an hour left, and I'm more than happy to hang around and answer any questions. Aaron, if you could stop sharing my screen and let me find StreamYard link, wherever that is. There it is. I can see myself. That was easier than last time. Okay. Do we have any questions? I'm assuming, Aaron, I will see them on screen. Do you have a slide that compares exec search to contingent? Yes, I do. Agnieszka, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, if we aren't already, drop me a note and I'll dig that out and send it to you. Yes. Yeah, I do have that somewhere. I just need to find it. Any more questions? No? No more questions before I go? Tim, I can see you're making the move in 2026 to retained. I love that. Any help that you need, my friend, just reach out. More than happy to kind of give you some pointers and tips if you need anything. No? No more questions? Last chance? Hey, Robin. Okay. Long-term clients already briefed another agency. It's difficult to sell retained when they've just briefed the agency. I'm assuming they haven't been working on it for long. I mean, typically we position retained based on the back of pain and failure and struggle, right? So if they've failed in the past to solve this type of problem contingently, then you might still have a chance. If not, what I'd probably do is kind of plan some regular cadence over the next few weeks with the customer to keep in touch. Yeah, and make sure when it does fail, which more often than not on a contingent basis it will, make sure you're there ready to go and you're the one that can be the knight in shining armor and save the day. Right? That would be my recommendation. Yeah, you've got to build that fire. You've got to make it hurt and make them see that a different solution is needed. Ewan, good question. At all levels, one of the biggest misconceptions I see is that retained is only right for C-suite executive level hires, and that is one of the reasons, right? But if I simplify it, retained is just a solution to a problem, right? It's a solution that allows us to solve problems where the contingent model doesn't. Typically, that's when we need to do more as a recruiter. When it's difficult, niche, critical, challenging, confidential, tough location, whatever the reason may be, when we need to do more, often it's hard for us to justify doing that when commercially we're completely at risk. Right? It's hard for us to justify spending that time and resource. So all retained is a pricing mechanism that allows us to do that because the customer commits. So yes, one of the reasons it can be difficult is because it's senior or it's in the C-suite. But it can be junior, just really niche. It can be in a tough location. It can be the client's got an awful employer brand. It could be that they're not paying enough. Like there can be so many reasons. So at all levels, when it's niche, challenging, when it's difficult, when it's not an easy search, you will be able to provide a better service to the customer on a retained basis. Questions flying in now. In our industry, we've got a lot of layoffs, internal recruiters and talent acquisition, stop external resourcing, retained or contingency. Yeah, I mean, listen, ultimately, no, what I've always found is that if companies can fill roles themselves, they're probably never going to retain us. Why would they? Right? But often the issues that internal talent teams have, what I call the 2Cs, right? It's either a capability issue, and I don't mean by that they're a bad recruiter, but maybe the role they need to fill is particularly senior or particularly specialized, and they just don't have the track record or the experience. And the other C is a capacity issue. Sometimes they just have that many needs in such a short space of time that they don't have the capacity, in which case they have to look externally. They have to look externally to make that work and to make it happen. So that would be my advice. Stay close to these teams, speak to stakeholders, carry out diagnostics, find the challenge, find the pain. Could be a hiring manager with a vacancy in their team that's causing them a real issue. It could be an internal talent team that are struggling to fill certain positions and getting kicked up the backside by the hiring manager. either way, you've got to find the pain first to be able to position the solution. How long to put your positioning to a ready to go retained model, as in the client would already expect this is your commercial model? I mean, you could do that overnight if you wanted to. Yeah, like you could do it overnight. You just need to change the website and start saying to customers, this is how we work. It just, all that changes really is when you're articulating the solution to the client, you go from we work in contingent ways when this is a situation, and retained when this is a situation. You go to we are specialists in niche, challenging and critical hires, and therefore we always partner our clients on a retained basis. So it's just a slightly different positioning when you want to be fully retained and not offer contingent at all. But you could do that straight away as long as you know how. Thanks. The exiting of contingent recruitment is as confusing at times as the move towards retained. Do you agree? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I'm not quite sure what you mean by the exiting of contingent recruitment. I mean, for me, I can just talk from personal experience on that. And I just got to a point where I was done working for free. I was done working really hard for clients and it not resulting in a fee. I was done having to work on 20 roles at any given time and not being able to do a good job for anyone. Yeah, just because just because I was working against 8 other agencies. So it happened for me very, very quickly. Like within a week, I'd gone from doing all contingent to saying I'm never working that way again. But it's absolutely possible when someone shows you how. More questions? Okay, guys. Good. Well, I can see already some of you have booked calls. I hope to see as many of you as possible over the next week or two. Anything at all I can do to help, just reach out. I will see you all very soon. Take care.